Welcome. Welcome to the April School.
You're muted again.
No, I'm not.
No.
The other one is, nope, you're fine.
We're fine. Welcome to the Schools and Education meeting for April. My name is Patricia Laria, Chair. To my right is Mark Fitzgerald, Vice Chair.
Jean Berger, member. Juliet Kay, member.
Rich Cacapola, member.
And we have some attendees in our audience. Welcome. And the topic for tonight's meeting is, my glasses. I can't see. Public school parents, leadership roles, and how to get involved. I'm going to switch it over to Mar, because Mar has a presentation. She's gonna run this segment of the presentation.
I mean, that's being kind. I don't know if I'd call it a presentation, but I think it's a collection of information.
Some slides.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here we go. We are in the midst of our school leadership elections right now, and shortly, the 25th, I think voting starts. And so we thought we'd just do kind of an informative meeting about opportunities for parents to get involved in school leadership and really be a boots on the ground, advocate for their kids and other kids in the school, New York City public school hemisphere. So one of the ways to do that is to serve on one of the many councils and groups that inform the leadership of the city and the New York City public schools. I'm trying not to say DOE because I know they changed the name. It's very hard.
One of the hardest parts of my day.
New York City public schools, administration and leadership and decision makers. And these people are usually, these parents and guardians are usually able to elevate issues to those decision makers. So those are, and I'll start here. What are citywide and community education councils? Citywide and community education councils, also known as CCECs, are created by the state education law. So a lot of these started when we got rid of the old school boards, which did not have.
Wonderful, but
Oh.
thank you for share.
And well, they were to replace.
Yes.
And I honestly don't know how different they are at this point, but we can chat about that later. There
They have
are,
more power.
I was gonna say the jurisdiction is what's really,
yeah, that's different.
that's what's different.
There are 4 citywide councils for special education, English language learners, high schools, and District 75. We're going to explain these in a minute. And we would be remiss not to mention the panel for educational policy, which is its own other animal.
Sure is.
What can they do? What are the powers of these groups, these bodies, these parent bodies? New York City's version of local school boards. They're made up of elected and appointed members, and the majority of those are current public school parents and guardians. They represent the voices of the parents and guardians and families of children enrolled in New York City public schools, and again, have the power to elevate issues to superintendents, central NYCPS sounds weird, usually central DOE, but to the decision makers and leadership at that level. All right. So here's a list of the ones that we're dealing with. There are also other opportunities like PTA and SLT, but we're not talking about those right now. We'll talk about those closer to the end of the year when elections are happening. CEC is the Community Education Council. It is specific to school districts. So for instance, here in Community Board 2, that's going to be CEC2, Community Education Council District 2, because that is the school district that we're in. Not to be confused with the community district, which is also number 2. And within that, we've even got council district number 2, but they are all different, different areas of the map, but do overlap. And their role and responsibility is to advise on education policies specific to their district, approve zoning lines, which I didn't even realize, and to hold public meetings. They meet monthly, except probably like most city bodies, not in July or August, one or the other. And they evaluate superintendents. So they do an evaluation for supers every year. I'm pretty sure that's a one-year term.
The superintendent?
No, CC.
No, it's 2 years.
It's a two-year term. It's PEP is one-year term, yeah. It's a two-year term. And again, you can be elected or appointed. CEC D75, that's the citywide council on District 75. Those are students in District 75. And if you don't know what that is, it is students with disabilities. They're schools for children with disabilities that need specialized instruction and a supportive setting. CCELL, Citywide Council on English Language Learners. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. They advise and advocate on issues affecting English language learners and their families. CCHS, the Council on High Schools. It's all public high schools. It is not specific to district. And it is citywide again. Represents families of high school students and advise on high school policies. CCSE is the Citywide Council on Special Education, and that's for kids with IEPs. I'm actually not sure, and I will ask one of our experts that I'm seeing in our room right now, if that includes students with 504s. We'll talk about that later. But it advocates for students with special needs across all districts. And of course, we mentioned the PEP, which is not really included in this, but that is the panel for educational policy. That is all New York City public schools, citywide. We're not going to do a deep dive into that, but we will provide a link for that later. And they really vote on the major policy decisions, including school closing, contracts, budgets, and co-locations. And that is why they are important. So we're going to talk again about the citywide. Who can run for these seats? In a nutshell, well, simply put, anybody, any individual who has a child, who is a guardian or parent of a child enrolled in a New York City public school. And it's different criteria. It changes for each of these bodies. For CECs, that's pre-K through 8th grade. So that's, pre-K up to through middle school. The Citywide Education Council sees for high school, here they are. For high school, it is parents, caregivers of kids in high school. Again, special education. You must have a child who currently has an IEP and is receiving NYCPS funded services in a public charter or private school. District 75 Council. You have to have a child enrolled in a D75 school or program. And you can also run for the CEC of the district in which your child's program is physically located. And for ELL, again, you have to have a student who is an English language learner, who is enrolled in NYCPS dual language transitional bilingual education, or English as a new language program, who was enrolled in such a program within the previous 2 years. Interesting. And also there are student members. And those students have to be served during their senior year and hold an elected position at their school. So student government, or maybe, does it qualify if they sit on the SLT, possibly? Any elected position, I believe. There are also appointed seats. And the people that can appoint seats, the electeds that can appoint people to some of these, and there's a whole thing on it, we'll put a link up, are the public advocate and the borough president and some CBOs or citywide organizations, depending on the body, can recommend people or appoint people to that role. So if you don't want to get involved, and again, you can't really get involved now because we're in the middle of the Application period has passed. As you see, it ended on February 27th. But keep it in mind for next year, January of next year. We'll provide links. You can apply if you are interested in any of these bodies. We are now approaching the voting deadline, or the kickoff of the voting, April 25th. It will close May 13th. In June, sometime, because we know NYCPS often says they're going to give us the dates, the information on a specific date. And it has happened that we don't get that information until July on a few occasions. But theoretically, July 1st, those council members will begin their 2-year term, whoever wins those elections. Only way to vote, well, actually, that's not true, but the way to vote is by using your NICSA account. And what is a NICSA account? That is your New York City Schools account. You need a code from your school to set up an account if you don't already have it. There are many videos and information slides on the New York City Public Schools website that will tell you how to do that, but you can also go directly to your parent coordinator and just ask them, can I have my code? And can you help me set up my account? Because if you're a parent just starting in school, you don't know that, and it can seem very daunting. I do remember. Also within your NICSA account, you can track your kids' grades, their attendance, their test scores. You can access other digital content, especially for these elections. If you want to be able to view the candidate information and the candidate statements, you must log in to your NICSA account, which you didn't used to have to, but I think you do this year. Let's see. And you get updates from there, information about emergencies, bus routes, and it is also where you vote, as we just said. And here's why all of this is important. CECs represent you, and you want to make sure that the people elected to your CECs, the people tasked with advising decision makers on your child's education, will represent your family's interests. This is an election year for CECs, so get involved or get informed, but definitely participate however you can. Voting is all online through NICSA, but it's not. There is a paper way, and we will actually post information about that, because I recall they couldn't just do that. There is a paper way to do it.
At your school.
Yeah, at your school. I think you just go to your parent coordinator and say, I'd like to vote. There's got to be a voting form, but we'll get clarity on that. Which council you vote for is determined by your child's grade and whether your child has an IEP. So if you have a kid in high school, you're not voting at CEC. If you have a kid in elementary or middle school, you're not voting at CCHS, the high school one. But if your child has an IEP, is a student with disabilities, is an English language learner, you definitely want to make sure that your voice is heard in these elections. And depending on the number of children you have and their status, you may end up voting in multiple CECs. And we will also share links. Let's stop the share with all of this information for Darlene. Oh,
Gavin's here.
I see we have an actual CEC2 member.
Are you able to promote him?
I'm going to promote him.
Are you a
Can I?
host?
Yeah.
Are you a host?
to? No, I'm not. Oh, he's got his hand up. Go.
Let me-
No, you do it right here. Where's the mouse?
That's the mouse.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Actually, are you guys candidates too?
Yes.
Will you please join us here?
Yeah, come to the table. Oh,
You trying to look familiar?
yeah, I think I did it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the interim, I see we have Matt Metzger, who's online. He's a CB2 member of the school. Committee member.
Good evening.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
All right, welcome.
Very well. Do you guys, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you guys need me for quorum in person, or am I right?
There's no vote.
No vote tonight.
I love it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
No problem, no problem.
Okay.
All right.
So you want to introduce?
Well, this is exciting. Thank you guys for
Yeah, of
coming out. Will you please introduce yourselves?
Yes, do you want me to go first? Okay. My name is Erin Carr. I live in District 2 on 9th Street. And my child goes to PS 41, which is a District 2 school. And then my eldest is at NYU. So we're all in district. And I decided to run for, let me tell you first, I'm in my professional life, I'm a writer. I write books, film and TV projects, and I do a lot of advocacy work. I also run learning sessions and advocacy work around drug prevention, treatment, education, and drug policy reform. So I do a lot of speaking with law enforcement, medical professionals, parenting groups, and young people. I love young people. I know that teenagers and middle schoolers have a bad reputation, but I see them through all of the shutdown prefrontal cortex and hormones and everything else. One of the things that I believe is that the student rep on the CEC council should have a vote. I'm running because for a few reasons. Last year, a few administrators and teachers suggested that I run. I'm on the EB executive board of the PTA at PS 41 and quite involved. And then a friend of mine who is very familiar with what's been happening with the CEC2 meetings contacted me and said, I really think you would be good at running. So when the fourth or fifth person said that, said, okay, let me look into this more. I didn't vote in the last election in 2023. I didn't know anything about it. And I'm somebody who is pretty well informed, which tells me that there is a big gap in sort of people being aware of this. And this is true for a lot of other people I know who are heavily involved in the school, either on the EB or just in the PTA in general. In preparation, I read a lot of articles. There's been a lot of press about CEC2. There's been members removed by the chancellor who then sued the school district to get put back on. And in watching back all of these meetings, there is a more conservative majority who have what looks like a political agenda to me. Some of them are directly associated with Moms for Liberty, which is a hate group. And I don't believe that they accurately represent the values of the constituents in District 2. There was so much time wasted on passing anti-trans resolutions, talk of book banning, and then all of the things that these same candidates ran on in terms of accelerated education. Their voting records are in conflict with the things that they purport to stand by. Additionally, there's several members who currently are on the council whose behavior, when I went and watched back these videos, I can see their faces. They are rolling their eyes at parents and students who are giving testimony. There was 2 months ago, there was a meeting where the parent of a trans student spoke about the fact that their child had attempted to take their own life because of all of the rhetoric around all this anti-trans rhetoric. 2 council members rolled their eyes as this parent is speaking. To me, that is unacceptable. I understand that we currently have an administration that behaves in ways that I never thought we would see for people who hold office. That may be true, but the way that I feel about it is this is my city, this is my district, and I do not want to allow that behavior to be modeled for our students and modeled for the constituents. It doesn't represent who we are. In terms of what I believe in education-wise, I believe in fully funded schools. PS 41 is a very fortunate school that raises a lot of money, and it's great, but it's also a show of how inequitable, even within our district, the schools are. We should not have to fundraise that money. We should have funding for all of the schools in every district so that they have the same access to quality public education, because the teachers are fantastic. I love the administrators at our school. I love the teachers. I love the paraprofessionals, the student teachers who come in. I have had nothing but a good experience with them. And again, there are members of the CEC who talk about, oh, we should cut the budget per student. Look at how much we're spending on per student. And I say, I haven't spoken to this person, but I would say, have you looked at an operating budget for a school? Have you seen where the money goes? Because clearly they have not. And I believe that this is because the part of their agenda is moving towards privatization and school vouchers to take money out of public schools and give it to people who know how to work the system and put their kids in private schools. So fully funded schools, strong protections for all marginalized folks, including LGBTQ plus and migrants and kids who are in temporary housing, kids with disabilities, IEPs, English language learners. We are the type of city that can provide a quality education for every single student. And I think that that's what we should be focusing on. The focus has been taken off of that in District 2 because of this extreme political ideology of specific council members. Gavin is one of the few council members who has done a fantastic job at being a voice for the students and parents and constituents who may not have children in schools, but care about their community. And there's I think a lot of what happens is that there are parents who just are really worried about keeping, the best resources for their kids. That is not the way that I think. It's not the way that I vote, and it's not the way that I teach my children. In my opinion, what's best for my children is making sure that we have the same access for all children in the community. If you look at data, I do a lot of looking at data because I advocate for drug policy reform. We look at financial statistics on the fallout from the opioid crisis, the fallout from incarceration, the difference in cost between incarcerating somebody versus putting somebody into a medicated assisted treatment program. So I like data. When you look at data in communities, in countries and cities who have put more money than average into their education, into social support systems, they end up saving money on a personal taxpayer level and on a government level. Over, not even over that much time, like say over 10 years, you start to see less than 10 years, you start to see results from that. I understand that there's, a lot of people get funny about like the way that the government spends money. But again, when you look at the statistics of policies and where our deficit has gone, where our GDP goes, and in the city, how our city thrives under different types of governing philosophies, the data backs it up. So my goal is to make it onto the CEC, number one, because something that I won't tolerate is the behavior that I've seen. And I will make sure that that is not acceptable. I will do everything in my power to make sure that the press knows about what people are doing, as they have been, but continuing to do that, and use every legal route possible to remove people who are not accurately representing the people that they have volunteered to serve. This is a voluntary position, obviously. And the people, exactly, yes. And this is, I've done work like this before. I was the president of a community association of 11,000 residents in Los Angeles with very differing socioeconomics and differing interests. It is absolutely possible to have differing philosophies about governance and have those conversations be civil. I have sat in rooms with congressional reps whose politics are completely diametrically opposed to mine, and I'm able to talk to them about specific policies because we do so in a respectful way. And that's like the first thing that needs to happen. So that's why I'm running. I feel very.
It sounds so great, but I wonder, how can we make sure you win? How's that going?
Well, I mean, I have a whole group of moms who I'm friends with who are going to help with get out the vote. We're going to be campaigning in front of, we can't campaign on property or at any school function or anything. So I don't do that at all through the PTA, but we'll be in front of schools. We are planning and coordinating with some of the candidates from other schools to kind of help get out the vote, because I think half of the problem is that people don't know what's been happening. And when I've talked to people about it, they are horrified by some of the resolutions that people have been passing. It just doesn't, we have in our district, we have, in the CEC2 district, we have Stonewall, and we're sitting here arguing over anti-trans resolutions for 2 years. It's ridiculous.
It is.
So, yeah.
I'm going to stop you.
Yes, yes,
Thank
yes.
you for sharing.
Sorry,
It's
I went on and
wonderful
on.
to know you. Who knew? And thank you for running, because we need people to run. We especially need people to run. And we know from this committee, like, the majority of us are old parents,
Yeah.
and it's hard to find parents with kids, grade school kids,
Mhm.
elementary age kids, to serve to volunteer
Mhm.
in this way and to stick with it.
Mhm.
I mean, all our kids are out now, and we don't have any more parents on
Right.
this,
Yeah.
like with kids, with school age kids.
Right.
Last one.
I'm the last one, but my kids just started high school. So
Right.
thank you for wanting to serve.
Hi.
And thank you all.
Should I?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sure, we want to know.
I'm like, I don't know if I should do the whole thing. I know it was an introduction. I don't know.
I went on a little long, I'm sorry.
No, it's like, I loved it.
I have to tell you, and this has been, for years, that it's very hard to really get to know the candidates for any of these bodies, because the way that they pack in the information and they do that, so I'm so glad you guys came, because
Right.
we don't get an opportunity to really sit down and hear and ask questions.
Mhm.
And we don't ever get a chance to ask questions as parents
Right.
of any of these people, which I don't think is fair. So please share.
Yeah, I will, totally.
Why?
So my name is Tamira Reed, and it's really interesting because I'm a NYU professor. I was just on campus all day teaching, and that this meeting is here. Because one of the things I've been working on within my own faculty department, global liberal studies, is not ignoring the fact that there's the biggest school system, public school system in the country right here, wrapped all around us. And there's not a lot of collaboration or awareness or real bridge building or even transition services, right? So the university isn't really in and of the city, like it says it should be, right? And so I think there's a disconnect between this great public institution, between community boards like this one, which happens to be on NYU campus, like it's just kind of blowing my mind right now, and these mini school boards, if you will, right? A lot of times we say CEC and nobody has any idea what we're talking about, which is part of the problem. It's like a lot to have to parse through and figure out what it is. It's like, okay, the PEP is the big school board, but then there's these district school boards, right? So currently I'm on one. I'm on the Citywide Council for Special Education. I was Monty Williams, the public advocate's appointee, and I'm finishing my term there. And it is the light of my life, I got into advocacy work around disability law and disability rights as a high schooler, when I worked in a self-contained classroom on campus, and the things that you would hear the other kids say about those students, and balls being thrown at their heads, and look, here comes the retards, and being segregated into a trailer while we had classrooms, and just a complete, ignorance around neurodiversity and around physical disability in general. And then I had my son, and noticed when he was around 2 years old that there was something going on that I couldn't really put my finger on. It's just that gut feeling that you have, and he was sort of regressing and acting in ways that he hadn't been acting before. And so I learned real fast how to read, everything there was about having him assessed and what assessments were available about early intervention. And it's a nightmare. It's a system that takes years to really be fluent in. So imagine the gatekeeping that happens by these powers that be, right? With getting information to families that need it in a way that they can actually understand it, they can become empowered. So I think that councils like that, like the Citywide Council for Special Education, do it on a very, very visible platform. And that's great. And I love being a part of it, but it's also like, chipping away at a big system every time you go to that meeting. And it's like banging your head against the wall because you kind of get like 10 steps forward and then it's like 20 steps back and then 10 steps forward again. But just being in that space coupled with the other work that I do, that's immediate. Right. So because I'm an advocate and because I've been on SLTs and I always use that space to talk about students with disabilities because they're supremely marginalized, particularly in District 2, which is where my son has gone to school since he was, in pre-K. Using that space to bring the issues out, to talk to the principal to, their face, to air it, to give it life, to show other parents that might be watching, hey, other people are going through the same thing. This doesn't have to exist in a silo. You don't have to be ashamed. You can know that there are other people that feel this way, right? So it's building community within a school community. And so now my life is the CCSC, but then working with families one-on-one, just as an advocate. It's not something I get paid for. It's not something that I want to be paid for because that in itself is gatekeeping. I have the knowledge and I want to share it. I want to help them, right? And so I call, we talk, I show up at IEP meetings, I plan IEP meeting agendas, I mitigate, I do a lot of like testimonials, a lot of hearings, a lot of getting people just to appointments sometimes, sitting down with school administrators and families. Unfortunately, sometimes even having students admitted to Bellevue, which is definitely a last course plan of, a course of action, but does happen. And then being there for the people that are raising those kids, right? Because the moms and the dads, and speaking as a single parent, like I know how hard it can be, and you feel like you've failed and you feel like you're fighting these battles every day with the school and that you have this like X on your back, and it's like just showing up for them because I can, and that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I love. And so it started with my son. Like he taught me grace. He taught me what it means to be, sorry, I always cry when I talk about him. I don't want to say resilient because I hate that word because it's just like part of the whole COVID thing for me where kids should just be resilient. And I really got annoyed by like just saying they should be resilient, but just grace and grit. And trying constantly just to try to make the system work for himself and now just loving himself for all the ways that he is, a divergent thinker and having that strong like love and empathy for other students, who are marginalized, and he sees it and he notices it. And so he has more grace than I do. He teaches me every single day. But speaking specifically about District 2 and this CUC, I did run last year and I was elected. But because of something called the same school rule, or you can't have two parents from the same school serve on the council, whoever gets the higher number of votes gets to stay on. I lost to a dangerous person. I won't make this about her, but we know who it is.
Yes.
By a half of a vote.
Oh.
And it was not called a runoff. It was not called a tie. It was not called a lot of things. They've since fixed that rule. But I feel partially responsible in a lot of ways. Like, damn, if I had just like gotten a half a human vote, right? But it would have happened regardless. What Erin was alluding to is Moms for Liberty. It's parents defending education. It's the parental rights movement, parental choice, which is really just a guise for an attack on civil liberties, an attack on civil rights, and an attack on human rights. And what I've seen happen in that space, both to me and to my son and to other people on that council, is disgusting and it's dangerous. And it's being used not only to advocate just for the needs of their children, which are usually the top 10% high-performing kids, protecting G&T, protecting accelerated classes, protecting these really great kids, right? It's not advocating for everybody. But what I do see is that constant, we need to protect our great schools from the outsiders. The outsiders are Black and brown students. The outsiders are students with disabilities. The outsiders are LGBTQ plus students. The outsiders are asylum seekers. And a lot of times, even the outsiders are the teachers themselves. So this divide between families and teachers, right, is this agenda that's pushed in that space constantly. And nothing can get done if we're in this holding pattern where we're experiencing this like really hateful, dangerous rhetoric every day. My son no longer attends those meetings. He used to. He really liked being a part of like community organizing in his mind until he gave a testimony. It wasn't in person. It was read into the record during a meeting, and one of the council members went like this and made fun of him. And this is a seventh grader at the time who signed his own name. And to do that in front of all of those people, and you know, it wasn't anonymous, it was really intense and it was really personal and it was very respectful. These are adults not only behaving badly, but really behaving in a destructive way. So I want to get on there and I want to advocate for decency, respect for all, dignity for all, and access for all, which is, you know, I could go into a lot of what access means for me, but it means getting rid of screened admissions for middle schools. It means we used to have 18 out of the 25 middle schools in this district, 18 or 19, used screened admissions, academic screened admissions. It's not a public school system if you're selecting which students you take. That's privatization. Those are private schools. You cannot select your students. These are public schools. So it's really everyone having access to the same schools, the same challenging advanced coursework early on, giving that exposure. Stop saying what students can't do and let them do it. Let them try and support them properly in doing it. So that's what I would advocate for. And a lot of other things, but I'll leave it there because I could go on forever. I feel myself getting red, which happens with the passion, but.
This seems to be part of the problem, that candidates don't really have an opportunity. I mean, I'm so glad you guys came, because I did see like, go to community boards. It literally says in the rules, go to community boards and talk about your candidacy. But I know from when my kid was in elementary school that you're very confined on what you can do and what you can't. So that's why I'm so happy you guys are here. And I can tell you've maybe needed somewhere to talk about your platform. So I'm glad that we're able to provide that. And I wish that all these years we had been able to see these candidates. We've never seen them before. So good on you. And I think we have one of our frequent flyers,
Hi, Gavin.
who also happens to be a member of CEC2 currently. And am I right? Are you also running again, Gavin?
I am running again. Yeah, I'm the parent of a seventh grader, so I can serve one more term, or I age out and would be in the sort of the citywide council in high schools. Yeah, I ran in 2023. Actually, Tamira actually got more votes than I did. But because of the same school rule, she did not get on, but I got elected to the council. And despite having served for this last 2 years on CEC2 and going through all the probably many things you've heard about CEC2, I still decided I would sign up again and run again and try for another term, because I think we have some unfinished business on the CEC2, and there's a lot we could do to kind of turn it around. I've been fortunate to serve with 3 other I think very dedicated members, including our 2 borough president appointees. Unfortunately, the 3 of them won't come back because of their children are now in high school, so they will be, not serving in that capacity anymore. And I also apologize for not being in person today. I actually teach at a SUNY campus, and I'm in Nassau County teaching today, and I just finished class right before this meeting started. But I think Mar, at the beginning you talked about the sort of the low turnout for these elections, and so I know that about 5% of eligible voters cast ballots in the last election in 2023. So we have about 5% of families basically deciding, what issues are going to get presented, and who's going to, present them. And so I'm hoping that we can turn it around and have a council that represents the other 95%, because I think the other 95% they're not interested in anti-trans resolutions, and they are interested in in school transportation, or they're interested in mundane things like school lunch. They're interested in the reading curriculum, the math curriculum, and they're interested in, representation of students with disabilities and students in temporary housing. And so I think those are things that our CEC, being that it's been the CEC of the 5% and not the other 95% has really ignored. But I think there's an opportunity with people like Tamira and Aaron to really turn this council around and have it, represent District 2 families in a better way. I think everybody knows, CEC2, last March, in March 2024, passed this resolution to kind of challenge the DOE's or New York City Public Schools gender guidelines, which allow students to participate in any kind of physical education or sports that, teams that align with their gender identity. And I mean, I think those policies have been in effect for 5 years. And on the council, as a council member, I never received a single complaint about those policies. Like, no family ever came to us and said these policies are wrong or harmful or we're concerned about it. But inexplicably, I think that some of our members kind of push their own sort of political agenda, which is very much a Moms for Liberty kind of agenda, and sought to challenge that. And it was fortunate that a lot of community members came out in force, that our elected representatives, people like Brad Hoylman, Eric Botcher, and others came to our meetings and spoke up, against this. Mark Levine, the borough president, as well. And but despite that, we have a council that has really sort of doubled down on that narrative. And it kind of, I think, relates to part of the function of CECs. And one change that happened in our CECs by state law after 2023 is that the New York City public school system is now required to give us a response to our resolutions, like in writing, within 2 months after we pass a resolution and submit it to them. So our resolutions are non-binding, they're advisory. But we do get a response. And I think that the New York City public school system really sees the CECs as like checking the box of parent engagement. And so they have a new policy, they want to, roll something out, and they will go to the CECs and seek that feedback. And so I think it's important that the CECs would kind of maybe better represent the district, in terms of better represent that 95% that's not voting, that hasn't been represented. And in terms of this resolution 248, one thing that I would be on my wish list for the new term in July would be that we rescind this resolution. Even though it's non-binding, it still stands on the books, and it's harmful in that respect. It's harmful that there is a CEC. Actually, we are the second largest CEC. We are the second largest district in the city. The only district that is larger than District 2 is District 31, which is like all of Staten Island. And they have maybe like a few more students than us. But like geographically and in terms of numbers of students, we are the second largest district in the city. And I think it's harmful. It's a harmful precedent that we have this resolution, on the books, particularly when we're faced with a federal government that is increasingly, virulent in its attacks on this community that's already a marginalized community. And I think the other really important thing that we need to talk about more in our CEC is students in temporary housing. Because we do have, throughout our city, we have a lot of students in temporary housing. We had a lot even before we had the influx of asylum seekers, but now we do as well. And we have schools in this community board district, like schools like 75 Morton is like the zone's middle school for many of the shelters in the Times Square area. And one of the things we worked on in the CEC last year that we were fortunately able to pass was a resolution opposing Mayor Adams's 60-day rule. Because in particular, we know that the mayor has been trying to basically force people to reapply for shelter every 60 days. And it's particularly harmful for families with students in public school. It's harmful for those students themselves, of course, because they've already faced, very significant like life disruption, education disruption in many of them walking across the border and taking a bus here. But it's also disruptive for their classmates, their friends who, they have built relationships with. And it's really disruptive for our schools as well. Our schools need to plan for their student body. They need to hire bilingual social workers. They need bilingual special education providers. They have budgeting issues. And so it's unfortunate that we kind of target our most sort of marginalized students to make a political point. But I think that to the extent that we as CEC members, representing that not just that 5%, but that 100% can stand up for those students, that benefits all of us. It benefits those students who need our help to recognize their potential and to deal with the trauma of that displacement. But it also helps, it helps their friends, it helps their classmates, and it helps their schools. So there's a lot of unfinished business. So I'm hoping that with the help of people like Erin and Mira and all of you, that we can accomplish that. And thank you.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you, because you have been there already 2 years, what would mark success for you as a member of a CEC? What would you like to see happen by the end of your term? What would you like to accomplish that would make things great for every student in New York City Public Schools? What is it you want to do?
So I would identify like two main things. And they're kind of broad, but one is I would like every family in the district to feel like welcome. Like if they have a concern, like they could come to our meeting and they could speak to those concerns, or they could email us, they could come in person. I'd like them to feel that they could bring their kids to that meeting. They could, like a student, a third grader, a fourth grader could come to the meeting and say, hey, I'm concerned about something going on at my school. I don't think we have that now. I think people are frightened to come to the meetings. I think people don't feel that it's a welcoming, inclusive space. And I'd love it to be like a place where like everybody feels like you can bring your kids on, the third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. when we're meeting. I mean, we're meeting this Wednesday at Lab Middle School on 17th Street. But I love people to think that like, oh, I could bring my fourth grader and my pre-K child to the meeting at Lab Middle School this Wednesday at 6 p.m. and we have an issue we want to talk about, and they would feel that like these are people who will listen to me. That would be like number one. And I mean, I think number two is we do have some work to do to kind of undo some of the, things like Resolution 248, this anti-trans resolution. I think July meeting, the first meeting of the new term, we need to rescind that. We need to and we need to reaffirm the gender guidelines that the DOE has in place, because they work and they're inclusive and they make people feel that they have a home in the schools. So I think we can do more of that. We can pass more resolutions, even though they're advisory, that really let the DOE know that like District 2 families care about students in temporary housing. They care about students with disabilities. They care about English language learners and not just the interests of like the 5%, they care about all these interests. So I think that those would be the things I would think about.
And to share with people maybe that, these things are not mutually exclusive. You can have rigorous academics and meet the needs of students that don't have the resources and access as some do.
Absolutely.
You can do it all.
Yeah.
I want to know about, I want to make sure that you win and you have your majority. And how does that, what are the politics of it? How many people are appointed and so I guess the borough president has a, what is?
Well, the appointees were not, I don't know that we're concerned with, I think, right this second, but you guys said what, 5% of people voted last year?
Yeah.
Like, how are you as candidates going out, getting out?
And how many people are,
and making
how many
vote?
people are on the board?
9, right? There are 9 seats?
There are a total of 12
There's
people.
a
on
9
the board.
elected.
9 elected and,
So
And 2
there-
appointed.
no, so it's 10 elected and 2 appointed.
And the 2 appointed come from the students,
And then the student who can't vote.
come from the borough president?
student or 2?
The borough president appoints those 2?
Yeah.
And they have a vote.
So
The
doesn't public
chancellor
advocate
appoints.
do
It's
that? I
So
don't,
the borough president appoints the 2, like, appointees of the borough president, right? And then the students, the chancellor works with student applications for those positions.
But again, in terms of power.
It's
So,
really-
so if there are 12
Yeah.
people, we need 7?
You need a super majority, and that's what, and it's not just this past term where this has been
A
problematic.
supermajority is more than.
Just a majority would be
A
nice.
simple majority.
We don't have a majority at all.
Right.
We haven't had a majority in 2 or 3 terms going back. I mean, I've been going to these meetings for a decade. So the conversations have always existed around gifted and talented and screened admissions.
Right. I mean,
I mean,
do you know that I was chair of community school board too 30 years ago?
Nice.
And we had, I mean, we had to.
these are not new struggles.
Right.
or
These are
It's
not
new
new-
struggles, but we won
Right.
because we got all the parents to vote.
Right.
That's really it.
And I think there's a sense of urgency. And I think that might be what tips the scales a little bit. Like the urgency should have historically been there. IDA has never been fully realized. We're the largest school district and the most segregated in every
Some people with
possible
IDA
way.
means-
IDA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, which protects students with disabilities with federal civil rights. So none of these things have been realized and they're never centered. And so right now, the attack on those federal protections, the attack on students with disabilities through the removal of IDA funding, right? Which has never actually been fully funded, only at about 12 to 13%.
This is national.
This is national.
issue.
And I understand,
And then-
I totally understand, yeah.
And then free and reduced lunch, Head Start programs, free after school. So these are all programs that help students who are already at a disadvantage, who have a lot of barriers to just access a fair and appropriate public education, right? So that would be what I would want to focus on if I were to be elected, right? And what would make me feel good? Well, frick, I would like to help every kid, but it's going to be, impossible. But having the conversation with a sense of urgency, we're losing this funding, this is happening. What's the plan? Right? Instead of like, let's just buckle down and put your head down and survive. Like that doesn't help our students. That doesn't help the people in the buildings working with students every single day. So working with the chancellor, right? Working with the superintendent, working with school administration, working with school boards, working with each other on the council to target each of those areas and see how those kids are going to be supported in a meaningful way where they're not going to drop out, because that is already historically a pattern for these students, right?
So how,
But I want to know, do you have 3 other people who are running who
they're
are,
not allowed to run a slate, so people are not working together at all.
well, they still could.
No, they still can't, actually, according to the rules.
What do you mean?
We get in trouble.
They
for that.
can't run a slate. They
I
can't-
understand that, but
Like-
they can,
they
they've
can
got to,
campaign-
they've got to.
If there
So
were
we-
a slate,
yeah.
we wouldn't know about it. It would,
Yeah.
yeah. But I imagine there are a lot of people
And they don't have a lot of
organizing.
opportunities. Other people, I think, organize. I
Yeah,
remember a few
There are
years
people
ago,
organizing.
back when I used to go to CEC meetings, I did stop.
Mhm.
And I will say that, you know what, that's how I met Patricia.
Mhm.
Oh. because CEC2 was amazing.
Yeah.
We had an amazing CEC2 that it not only was it a very welcoming environment, like I just started running meetings by myself. I was a young parent. Well, I wasn't young, but I had a young kid. And I was an old mom with a young kid. And I really didn't know anything about public schools. I didn't go to public school. Like I had no concept. And I met these wonderful, really active parents like these and like Patricia and they taught me everything.
Well, that is exactly
You know, and
how we
we
won in the
learned
old days. You know that.
But that's what we had. And
So we had,
that.
our slate had the parents. I mean, there were the conservatives and there were the middles and there were us on the
Well, we don't
left.
want to get political, I think,
But
here
Rich
today.
has-
Every parent has an account for
He
this.
was,
They don't.
That's the
That's one of my.
And it's one of
That's
the
the
things that's
problem.
really important, the first line of like action is getting people to register for those accounts. Because as of June, you will no longer receive a report card in your child's backpack. The only way to see a report card and then next year to sign up for parent-teacher conferences is going to be through your NICSA. So it's vital that people sign up for them and it's like.
And that's a problem in itself, just technically, you're supposed to give the parent coordinator if you have an issue. Not
And
all
to get your
parent
code.
coordinators are the
They
same.
have to give an individual
But
code.
there's
I
also, there's also with,
That I know the answer to.
with immigration
Why?
status.
You
this
know,
is an
I
issue.
understand why.
People are
Why?
reluctant to
It's
sign
a
up for a NICSA account if they're not, you know.
No other
Yeah,
way
so
to
we're
do
trying to
it
really
legally.
To validate people.
Yeah.
It's like when we get applications for SLA or cannabis or whatever, there's really no way for us to really know that the people are attached to that application or that location or that license number. We don't know if these people are attached to that child. If they just randomly
No,
set up an
exactly.
account.
That's why you can't do that. Yeah, that's why there's also codes for my school.
There needs to be a better way.
There needs to be, and
This
this
is something that like the city has been grappling with and cities across the country
Yes.
grapple with of like
Yes.
how to make online access easier, but the answer is that like there's a desire, but there's a barrier to entry, just like with the available technology and the best, safest way for kids is to have individualized codes. Cause listen, I've been on the flip side of this where I've seen really, really horrible legal battles between
yeah.
parents and
oh yeah.
these codes getting in the middle and like, it's worse. So I would say that there is definitely like strong rationale of like why NICSA accounts are created the way they are, but certainly it's a known barrier and I think there could be better education. Also, I would argue NICSA has become way easier to use in the past.
It's getting,
Yeah.
it's
7 years
getting
than it was,
easier.
like, 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
but there is like a real fear
Yeah,
around using it for certain populations right
Yeah,
now
sure.
too. And those are populations that we're trying to target, like in a meaningful way, like, and there won't be any ramifications, but we can't promise that. My students' data, my son's
almost
data
like it's
has
by
been
design.
breached by the DOE, not once, not twice, 3 times. All of his personal information. And it happens to students with disabilities more than any other group, right? And that's 300,000 students in the city. And so none of these things are really private, right? Like, because there's always that room for something to happen. And so we're trying to figure out a way to do this where it's more accessible, there's less fear, but also it's done right. If you have a group of people that are throwing out ballots because of, just kind of arbitrary reasons, that's another problem. So the comptroller's office really did look into this, like into CEC District 2, but, citywide elections last year, and there was so much corruption at a level that was just unbelievable. And they created this working group this year, which I'm on and Gavin's on, and it's the elections committee working group to try to make this year better for everybody in terms of running, campaigning, what's a violation, what's not. And it's just been another one of like, check the boxes. We did this community engagement and nothing was really nothing's changed. But I think to answer your question, it's getting people out. It's like you can't replace people in the schools talking about the elections, helping people sign up for NICSA, having a QR code where you can vote right there if you want to, or go to somebody and find out more information about them, getting students involved, talking to students. I have NYU students who are campaigning. you know, not necessarily even for me, but they like know all about it and they're excited and they're first generation students who are pissed about what's happening, who are passionate about what's happening. They're my students with disabilities, you know, and these are my NYU kids. And I'm seeing more and more of this population, right? Like this, like diverse population of students. And I'm like, that should not be the exception to the rule. It should be the rule, you know? And so they're really engaged. They're watching what the city is doing. They know all the leaders, they know all the players, and they're going to be out there. But that's what it takes. And it's like, I don't know if we're going to do it. You know, I hope to God that we can get these people off and we can take back that space, because it's not for parents, really, it's for the students. And what they're advocating for isn't even in the best interest of the students 99% of the time. So getting students to vote that are represented, the representatives, they can vote, but it doesn't count. We never listen to students. You know, like in that space, like it's very limited where like they actually value student testimonial.
Changing
right?
the chancellor's reg, right?
Yeah,
to
or just
allow
listen, like this is what
the
happens.
student to vote.
You go to that one of those meetings, sorry, I just get so pissed when I think about this, right? As an educator. But why would you want to be on a council if there are people coming up to public speaking session? It's so hard already, you know, to go up there and be vulnerable, especially if you're a student or a minor, and you go up there and you're giving your testimony, and you have 4 people on the council who are doing this, videotaping you, you know, recording you, recording children,
and
or as soon as you start talking about something they don't like trans rights, they just play on their phone the whole time. And the speakers sometimes say, "Can you please look at me?" And they refuse.
So oh, sorry.
So, well, first of all, let me ask this. Do you guys have websites or social media accounts where people can get in touch with you or find out more about your position on things?
Yes,
Are you guys-
so
I don't really know.
I have a website that's going up. I have somebody, another mom at my school who's helping me, you know, sort of like de facto help with the campaign. We're going to put up a website that just has basic information. It's Erin Carr for CEC2. It's the same email address, Erin Carr, the number 4 CEC2 at Gmail. That's anyone can contact me that way to ask questions, to get information, if they need help with their NICSA, setting up a NICSA, any of that kind of thing. And to what we were, to the point of what we were talking about, something that I'm really interested in doing is going to go with the chancellor, putting in new regulations about a code of conduct for CEC members. I think that
We did a resolution on that.
CEC members,
Resolution on that.
yeah, CEC members should be present at meetings. They should not leave in the middle of the meeting to prevent a quorum when they don't have the numbers for something to pass, which I have seen repeatedly.
Going on for a long time.
There was somebody who left, there were 2 people who left at the last meeting when they started talking about the trans, rescinding the trans rights resolution 248, and they got up to leave, and then another member left, and you know, people are like yelling from the audience, like, why are you leaving? And this council member said, oh, well, there's nothing, we can't vote because we don't have a quorum. Well, that's not your only responsibility. One of the responsibilities is listening to the people who've taken time out of their lives to come and give testimony.
At that point.
They don't-
But, I mean, I once saw a CC member who used to be a member of this board actually at a different meeting, at a candidate event, invite select members of the CEC2 at the time, and try to call it a CEC meeting because they had quorum in a totally different, not even within the map of CEC2.
Yeah.
Actually tried to do that
Right.
and would have gotten away with it except got shouted down. So
To be on our board,
used to be on this committee, matter of fact.
And that goes back to Gavin's point too, like his goal is a beautiful one, and that's one that we should all hold as a community.
So how are you guys
have
gonna
it
do
be
that?
like a safe place for students to come and give testimony, right? And for everyone, but particularly students, and they need to trust the adults in the room, and right now they definitely don't.
And they
Well, they're
shouldn't,
right.
they shouldn't trust those adults.
We've had our children who are students with disabilities, when they have spoken, be called props. We're using our kids as props, like kids don't have agency and don't have an opinion on their lives and their learning, that we're parading them around like circus animals. I mean, the ableism is off the hook, the racism is off the hook, so how do we heal that? How do we, kind of bridge that? It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take calling people out on it and getting them off of that council. I mean, if you acted that way anywhere else where you're employed, you'd be removed, right? Like if you can't fulfill your job duties, you'd be removed. What they're doing is impeding progress.
Yeah.
I feel like I was at a different community board the other day. They have this whole speech of norms and warnings that lasts a good 11 minutes just to read.
Wow.
And the cops are always there at every meeting they have, because that's where we are as a country, I think. I mean, this is not unique to CC2 or, I thought at Community Board 2 got wild. Sometimes we don't get wild. We are not spicy. We are not saucy.
Yeah.
There are places where crazy stuff's happening. But my biggest question is, and my biggest concern is that the engagement, getting the vote out. How do we bring in those families? 5% is ridiculous. What is that, like 200 families? Like 600 families, right?
And they're motivated by an organization, called PLACE, which is Parents for, what is it? Something accelerated. Yeah, it's like
accelerated.
Yeah, it's a very political group that calls itself, an
And this has nothing to do with
activist,
politics.
right?
This has to do with the education
And they
and
control the vote,
socialization of our children, right? Because school is where you learn to be a human and to interact with other humans. And so this is what we need to focus on. Myself, probably because I stopped going to CEC meetings when the administration changed.
Yeah.
But for myself, that's the thing. We need to stay focused on the kids.
Absolutely.
We need to stay focused on making great schools and making those schools available to everybody. But if everybody is not part of that conversation, how do we do that? So how are you getting the vote? Like, are you going to be boots on the ground at every school in the district for the next 3 weeks?
3 weeks. So the next 3 weeks is going to be intense.
Yeah.
100% going to be boots on the ground. I mean, sort of leading up to this, it's just been me talking to parents I know, friends of mine and friends of friends. And then I think it's about reaching out to anyone we know who might have a child in District 2 in a New York City public school. So I have friends who live all over New York, but they might have friends in District 2. And just it's the most important thing to me is getting out the vote first and foremost. Whether or not they vote for me, I just want people to have a voice, right? Because ideally the CEC is a conduit between New York City public school system and parents. And that's what we should be. We should not, and bringing this sort of political ideology onto the council is ridiculous. And that's what I'm seeing happen. And again, we can have differing opinions about educational policies, social service policies in schools, whatever it may be, but it needs to be done in a respectful way. And I think at a bare minimum, that should be bare minimum code of conduct for council members. I've seen them have tantrums, and it's not okay.
But okay, so I just did math. We have 25,000 students in CEC2 and Community Education Council 2. 5%, that means 1,250. How are we getting to the other 23,750 families?
I don't know if you noticed that there are so many, if you compare District 2 to every other district, how many people do we have running? It started at 81, but it may have dropped. Some people have dropped out. No other district has that many people running. That many people are running because people are upset. And when I've talked to people, I think particularly at a time where a lot of people are feeling a bit paralyzed
but how do we get to that?
Is by having conversation. It's really about having conversations, and anyone else we know who is motivated to make our communities better, to have conversations with people they know. I mean, I think it's again, I'm not a person who doesn't read emails, who's not involved. And I don't know how I completely missed this in 2023. I had a surgery that spring, but other than that, I'm how did I miss this? And I'm not the only one. many people I spoke to at our school who are very involved didn't know anything about it either. That's an issue. I do think that more people are aware of it now, partially because of the press that the meetings have gotten. And then also because I think because of exactly this, we have a lot more people talking about it. I've had so many more conversations.
But not enough.
Not enough.
This is the problem
Do we,
that I
do
see.
we know what the turnout was for they did a
Shitty.
candidate forum,
It's
right?
really, yeah.
Yeah.
So the candidate forms are talking into just a box. And a lot of people don't even go back and watch the candidate forums. They didn't schedule the candidate forums face masked up on a lot of them. I'm still getting calls about doing a candidate forum that I already did. I'm getting calls about a candidate forum that I already confirmed for CCSE. So FACE is the hub for all of those. And when they're dysfunctional, it's all dysfunctional.
Are there other ones for CEC2? I see there was one on.
No, we
the-
already had
Ninth
them.
and
But you
tenth.
Those
can
are
watch,
all.
you can watch all of them.
But even the attendance for those was extremely
Yes, all in a
low.
row, and they can all be watched. And they actually, I thought they were gonna be really long, but we had 1 minute to respond to each question.
How do you
And-
guys know?
But you
I know.
don't. So
You
this
don't.
is the thing that I think. So the candidate forums were ill attended just by candidates that didn't even show up. There are candidates who have name recognition, they think, or sometimes it's true, and they're like, I don't have to go do that thing. Or they're working parents and they didn't have enough options. They didn't have childcare, all the problems that we see with engagement to begin with, right? But the problem of why we're here again is last term, we had so much work. You guys know Ann Hager, right?
Yes.
So much,
on this
yeah,
committee.
so much advocacy. She started this grassroots, like, you would have loved it, like push to talk about Moms for Liberty, to talk about the CEC, to get people energized, to get us those votes to get on. But what needs to happen is in between the election cycles. And that's where we fall back.
Mm.
That's where we miss the mark. We're like comfortable with the status quo. Okay, we're gonna chill here for a while. But then we're gonna push really hard when the elections come around again. We need to build. Because what we're up against, they've been building for years. It's not overnight. But for now, like we need everybody out there. Like, thank you so much for like letting us talk about this because we don't have a lot of spaces to talk about it, and it's hard. We can go to schools, but we can only go within like a certain amount of feet or we get like kicked off. And it's like, there are so many rules that you have to be careful of, so that engagement is hard. And then parents are like, I got to go to work or like, I'm picking up my kid. And it's hard to be like, I'm not selling you anything. Well, I'm selling you me, but like, I'm not selling you anything. But more of this, like more and help spreading the word,
I mean, we'll have notes from the meeting and they.
Yeah.
And there'll be flyers, like I'm sure with candidates and QR codes and all that stuff at some point soon when voting opens. So getting those in the right places where people can get them and, but things like translation are a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We have a school for the deaf in District 2, and we need someone who knows ASL to go and give out those flyers and talk to people, and engage them. So it's really like,
And the deal.
Yeah.
New York Public Schools is not doing that,
they
right?
don't.
They should.
I mean, I never even got an email that said like, get your Nixa account, like,
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
There's gotta be some sort of notification that goes.
Yeah.
It was just this year, in the last couple of months, they were really pushing the community education. I don't remember getting one single email. And maybe I did and didn't recognize it, but I don't remember this.
I mean,
Yeah.
Because I'm an
My
involved
kids-
parent,
Yeah.
I knew about the elections. I knew about stuff like that, but if you're not an involved parent.
if you're not.
I was involved, I was an active member of the PTA. And I'm telling you that like half of the executive board didn't vote last time because my child is newer to the school. He's in second grade now. So the last election, he was in kindergarten. I'd only been there a year. And the first year we were still in COVID times. So I didn't have a lot of face-to-face interactions with people. But no, when he was in kindergarten, I don't remember hearing anything. And this is true for a lot of other people who are on the executive board. They didn't hear about anything at our school. And so I don't know, I don't know if that could be, it could be a failure on our individual parts. It could be a failure on the school or New York City.
I mean,
Public
is it
Schools,
even
or-
the school's job though?
It's a question.
It's the parent coordinators, they're supposed to put out the blast, they're supposed to talk about it, the principal sometimes, but you get so many emails and then you see this thing that says CEC and you just like, like the messaging is not totally there. I
And sure,
think,
it's
you
also,
know?
it is, it's overwhelming. It's a lot. And especially for when your kids are really, really small, you're dealing with so much
Right.
other stuff that like, huh?
I wish we
What?
could go
I'm
into
supposed to go?
schools and talk to people. Like, that's what I wish, and I think that that's what the CUC also needs to do a better job of. They all, I'm saying we because of the CCSE, have liaison schools.
Maybe we did
Right.
need to do a resolution.
Yeah, well, I think.
I think we should do another meeting on this. I think that we should do a meeting on participation
That's a good idea. Yeah, I agree.
and, right, because we've written other resolutions
Yeah.
that touch on this, like from different
I've dropped-
angles.
I dropped two, one about conduct.
The conduct one we did,
And
yeah.
then the other one, Human Services did a resolution opposing 248 that the CC did.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
Yeah.
the New York City Public Schools, the DOE taking responsibility for getting this, actively getting this information out to parents. Like, I worked on this thing with Dan Goldman around safe gun storage, that we ended up having to do a press conference and bring all these people in because it was a simple ask.
Right.
Like, just get this information, which they were actually required to do, about safe gun storage for parents. And they just wouldn't send it out. And so Dan staged, Congressman Goldman staged an actual press conference just to get them to get this critical information to parents. Information we knew saved lives and kept children and families safe. So that's the resolution I want to write. They must be responsible for getting the information to the families.
Right.
Whatever that information is. If it is beneficial to all, they need to share it, and they need to share it in a way that it will be featured and it will be heard and read, and that there's follow-up and somewhere to go to ask questions if you have them. And of course,
And I think that in this next term, regardless, if I don't make it on, that doesn't stop my advocacy, right? Like I do advocacy is a huge part of my professional life. So, and now I am engaged in this. So I'm in regardless of whether or not I win a seat. But I think that it's important, to your point, in between elections, that there is more interface between the community education councils and parents. I think that they're and I need to think a little bit, and students, because also to your point earlier, I am a firm believer that with young people, we give them information and we give them tools so that they build self-efficacy and have agency over decisions in their life. In my experience, you are on the wrong path if you are trying to just create barriers for your child to keep them safe, right?
Right.
Safety is in information. Safety is in giving them tools to make decisions for themselves. So that's very important as well, is interface with parents and students in between the elections as the term goes on.
and that's why we need to do the resolution and maybe create a little bit of a plan for them to do that. Maybe the frequency of the messaging, some of the
Right.
topics that are important, if we can remember what we were missing.
Yeah.
Because we went looking for the information, but Gavin actually pointed out, do people really believe that they have to be registered with the Board of Elections or a citizen to vote in CEC elections?
I actually encountered this when I talking with parents. I would say that, like, just to like kind of reiterate everything that all of you have said, is that I found that the vast majority of parents had no idea that there were elections. Like, this was in 2023. I hope a few more do now know about it now. But then the ones that did said, oh, I think I vaguely read some announcement somewhere that there's something called the CEC, but they had no idea that like voting was literally taking place like at that moment. But yeah, I have encountered parents who said, oh, I'm not a registered voter, or I just have a green card or something, I can't vote. And I have to remind people that as long as you have a child in a New York City public school, you can vote. And I think that speaking to all of this is like the comptroller's office issued a report several months ago talking about some of the issues around the last CEC election, both in terms of like the enforcement of some of the campaign guidelines and how it had been unfair, but also the lack of, we have a lot of schools where there's like no one voted, and this is maybe even a bigger problem at the high school level because, like high school parents tend to be like sometimes a little less engaged because they're not doing drop off and pick up every day. They're not attending the PTAs so much. So there's like maybe a little bit like less awareness of it. But I mean, it's a state law requirement that we have these elections. The state basically leaves it to the DOE to do it. But my understanding is that, the DOE has a small staff on the Office of Family and Community Engagement that manages CECs, and then like a few weeks before the elections, they will sort of put out a request for proposals or some kind of like help wanted ad saying like we need people to step up as on a temporary basis to work in the election work. And so there's not a lot of maybe like institutional like knowledge being passed on from election to election. And so whether it gets beefed up somehow would be nice, or if the state can come and audit it would be nice, because I really do think that if it's a state law requirement, we really need that the DOE to step up and our state electeds to kind of maybe like put some pressure on the DOE to make sure that this election does get more awareness and more turnout, and it is done fairly and rightly.
I have a question. Is it one vote per family, or does each?
Three.
And it depends on how many kids you have. So if you have one child, you get 3 votes. You get 3 votes per child, basically.
They can't all be for the same candidate, so you'd have to vote for 3 candidates.
Oh.
And the reason that the half vote
That's
comes in if there's,
You get a half.
because it would be
Two
2
parents.
parents, so they would each get
Oh.
1.5 votes.
But now they'll round it up. The new rule is if there's a tie or, half a vote between 2 candidates at the same school. So it's going to determine who gets to sit on the council. They'll round it up and then they'll have a runoff.
Why is it?
Because I think it's like consolidation of power, like too much power for one school to have that much voice and influence on the council. So there's good and bad things about that, right? Yeah.
Very detrimental to like the
Yeah.
rezoning process if
Yeah.
half the CEC was it from one school.
Right.
And that's like the main.
Yes, but then
They were all specialized.
I don't think,
Control over.
but I don't like the idea of doing anything to restrict.
For sure.
Voting, which is what.
It's hard. It's a hard rule, because you can have.
And
two very
I mean, I understand they could work in the wrong
Correct.
direction, but, so could small elections,
I know what you're.
Well, for CCHS, the high schools, it's even more problematic, like Gavin was saying, because you have a lot of representation from specialized high schools. And so those parents are representing those students in that space. And, just to be frank, they're all white all the time. And if you look at New York City public schools and our high schools, we're not representing even every borough, like it's not doing a service to anyone to have that sort of like consolidation of power. That council needs a whole hell of a lot of work, and even now, I mean, it's like
A mailing list, a database to work with?
no, we don't. We'd be
We're
very
not,
careful.
and we're not allowed to use,
The PA.
like, I can't use my resources with the EB. So I've just been speaking to people who I'm friends with, who I, would speak to anyway, one-on-one that way.
I mean, it makes
It's
you,
hard.
It's hard.
it's really hard.
There are a lot of
Because
barriers.
anything, it's, like every election in this country right now, it's so contentious
Mhm.
that if you are misconstrued to be doing something
Right.
against the rules, but these are hard rules for the CEC. I've always thought that the BOE should administer these elections.
Right.
I have always believed that. My understanding is BOE said no, but maybe that should also go in the resolution.
Yeah.
Because if the Board of Elections administered these, take it out of FACE's hands.
Mhm.
We're busy enough
Right.
and
It's so tiny. I don't. say
No,
so,
I know.
But it's like, it continues to shrink. They're in one small room on the 4th floor of Tweed. It's like.
Yeah.
And when there's a problem with an election, and I've been through this, at schools before, then you end up with the family
Yeah.
coordinator
Right.
from CEC2.
Mhm.
Who is that now?
Family
Is there a
coordinator for the
group?
district.
I don't
It's
think
not
that
Greenberg.
died. They
She
filled
did.
I don't
Died,
think they
right?
filled it. I think there's just.
I mean, not
the
to
other
speak
role.
of the dead, but
Oh,
like,
I
we
mean, you
had a
can
lot
always
of
reach
calls
out
when
to
we
her.
were at
Yeah.
41. The
Yeah.
elections were not
Also the support-
being
She was like the.
done correctly at all.
coordinator, and then there's
At
the
all.
Support, da, da, da.
And-
That's her sister.
A few had to be overturned.
It was a really enlightening.
And then that's who they sent to help.
experience. But out of that comptroller's report, they face, out of the DOE, so what is it, family and what is it?
Community
Family-
engagement.
Community engagement.
There you go. I'm like, they aren't that thing, so I always forget what it stands for. They created this elections working group, again, this advisory council of people that are on CECs and citywides to talk about how to make this time better, how to get the word out, how to do all the things we're talking about.
In their seats,
And
they
it
don't
is
care.
worth,
The system works
no,
for
they're
them.
all going again. They're all like going up for reelection again. But it doesn't, they don't do anything.
There's no
We've
change.
been there and we're like, we're telling you this, but the clock is ticking. Why didn't you start this a year ago? Why are you getting our input when we're like a month out or 2 months out? They don't care, and so that's the problem there with FACE. Like, it's really not improving. It's only getting kind of more disastrous,
We
It's
are,
like, I don't know what to do about that part of it.
So it sounds like we're gonna do a resolution, but we have to invite
but not,
Faith.
and we need to have
Yeah.
a full meeting about this, and I think
Yeah.
really try to make things better before the next election.
But the problem is the dates. I mean.
Yeah.
Then the next one, we're too late for this one. The dates are the 25th to the 13th of May are the voting dates for all of these. And we'll send out something, I guess, with our newsletter, like, citywide and community education council, elections are open, with a little blurb on, like, the school committee will send something out in our blast, in the CB2 blast, to get the word out, is really all we can do.
And we get endorsements that candidates or slates, once they come out, that, we don't know,
can't
we're on a
acknowledge
slate,
you're not
right?
involved.
We're not allowed to acknowledge.
But different organizations will endorse certain candidates, right? And that's great, because you're like, oh, I love, like the people at AQE, or I love the,
Or
people over here,
ECC, or,
ECC, like I trust their opinion.
Yeah.
But
So trusted parent groups and parent organizations,
Yeah.
trusted
can't be a
ones.
PAC though. If it's a PAC, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that happened last time too. So the rules are very, very clear, but that helps us, like when
So
people
frustrating.
magnify it.
Like, you just want to advocate for your kids and
I
all
know.
kids, and
And
it's
it's like
become this whole
pushback.
political
Yeah.
thing.
Which is again, goes back to the whole point that like all of this like arguing and behavior detracts from serving any child, even their own. So
And that might be what they want, So it's like, and it's just very anti-democratic, the way that it works. Like, we're really not empowered at all.
Yeah.
It's just all an illusion,
And people are not getting the information they need. All right, we're at 8:00.
But we
you
didn't
guys-
take questions from.
Oh, we didn't take questions from the public.
yes.
Well, you guys are the public too. Do you have questions?
Yeah, Chris?
Yeah, hold on, give me a second, I had. Well, so I was asking, because I.
Come closer, because you.
Right here.
Yeah, sorry, so like, I hear that there are like, you can't have like blocks of candidates running at once. And I also know that,
People can. Anybody
Right.
can. The actual candidates cannot be a part of a
A
slate.
PAC
a
or, yeah.
a slate or something, okay, I see. And then I think also I heard that like there are 3 votes per family and.
Student.
Per child.
Oh, per child,
Yeah.
that's right. And then also that there are a lot of candidates running, or like,
There were 80.
Not really, but
I
more
actually
than
have it up right
normal.
now.
okay, I
There
see.
used to be 80, but now there's like 60,
60.
and people have removed their names. so they're still
64.
on there.
There are
is
64
weird.
as of right now.
Yeah.
I guess are like,
Except there's one on here that I know is dropping out, so it's interesting.
For
Yeah.
context, the Citywide Council on Special Education has like over 600.
oh, wow, okay, well, that's a lot. I guess like the question is like, are we worried about like vote splitting? Like, do we think about like, oh,
Yeah.
there's so many candidates
Yeah.
running this similar
Yeah.
platform?
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
there's like maybe a more, I guess like, how do you guys think about that?
But the
Not
problem
like
is
the
part of the
mayoral election.
part of the problem is like that we can't really, it's challenging based on the campaign guidelines to be able to sort of come up with a strategy.
So other
We
people
can't do that. Other people outside of us can do that
Oh,
and then give their endorsements of like a block of
Six
candidates,
people,
but
right.
we cannot do
I
that
see.
because we're running.
You can, so that was a big discussion, even though I wasn't.
They can't even accept
I wasn't a part of that
We
discussion, but I
can't
know
like a social
about
media.
this discussion.
Don't like
So
anything.
No.
last term, I can tell you, there was a slate that was endorsed, right? And I was on that, and it wasn't like my slate, I didn't design it. And Gavin and Lupe Hernandez, who is an amazing advocate, and if you don't know her work, you should
We know,
you should look
she's
up
a
her
friend
work.
of
Yeah.
CB2.
She's amazing. And because it was just so few, like we really pushed it and that fire was everywhere, we got on. We
yeah.
got elected, but then Lupe and I both got bumped because of the same school role.
Oh, okay.
So now there's more candidates, right? I know for a fact that are being endorsed. So we might cancel each other out sometimes, but like, I think we don't want to discourage anyone who's coming to the table and saying, I want to get involved and I want to run. So that's the hard thing, right?
I mean, that is democracy, though.
Yeah,
But
it
really,
is.
what is also democracy is working for the good of the cause. Again,
It was the
mayoral
next
election.
Mhm.
Step down
That's a really
if
good
you
question.
are
Yeah.
going to detract from the goal.
Right.
That's right.
But what also is democracy is organizing groups.
Which
Yeah.
you can do.
I understood.
I guess the follow-up that I had was like, what kinds of groups? Because you mentioned like Moms for Liberty is like one group that like does this. And I assume they do a very good job doing this because like we talk about them a
You
lot.
have a lot of money behind it.
That's right, exactly. So like, what are the other groups that get involved in this kind of?
So Place New York.
No. Let's talk about the other groups
That's a big one.
that are specific to New York that, where you could get information about candidates. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or like that coordinate strategy. I feel like places that like do this kind of thinking about like, okay, like we have a lot of great candidates, but we want to like win this election and we want to like change the way that things are currently. Like, how can
That's
we
what
get
we
to that
need,
goal?
because we have that on the other side.
That's right, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
and that's what we're up against. So those people that show up, they're showing up because that organization got them
Yeah,
like really mobilized, and they show up at every election, right? They will keep doing that. So there isn't I don't think we have, a home base. We're building one. We built one around the last one,
Yeah.
and now we're kind of building an underground one this time. But it's not there yet.
I mean, there are a
It's
couple
not
of
there yet. It's a
groups
great question too.
that I can think of off the top of my head that may weigh in on this election. Happy to share. ECC would be a great one.
Yeah.
AQE would be
No, it does
another
stand for-
one.
There's so many acronyms.
I mean, everything.
Yeah, that's our kind of adversary.
Yeah.
Now I'm.
Oh, that's.
They were
yeah.
like worked with Moms for Liberty.
Yeah.
There's an educational council consortium.
That's
the
ECC.
And I'm on the policy committee for them, and they do really great work locally and in Albany.
Yeah.
And then AQE.
AQA, there used to be a great one called Free Families
Yeah.
for Real Equity in
Yes.
Education, remember?
And there's student ones too. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
Like,
NYU
you're a student, I'm seeing stuff, students around me.
NYU College Dems,
Yeah.
as you said, NYU
Yeah.
College Dems is very involved in this, not working directly with candidates, but I know that they are doing some GOTV around this. And during the mayoral candidate forums, they actually were asking, they are really great kids, lots of questions about education and
They
about
are.
their Tiquandra, the specialized high schools,
Mhm.
We can't- we
discriminatory
can't,
admissions, like they were
yeah.
asking all of these questions really blatantly to these mayoral candidates. And I was like, why do they care? They're already in college, but this is still very close to
They've done,
them.
and I have to
But
say,
it's
they've
still
done a
very close to
fantastic
them.
job this year in terms of, and for council positions as well. They had a lot of people who are running for council
Yeah,
positions.
But I think that
And
young
community
people
boards, they do
also
community board
see
ones
that
too,
like
try to figure out how to run.
it's a public good.
That's-
Like that's another thing. Like my students see this, like the young people in my life see this, right? They're like destroying or defunding public education. Like it's something that's for the good of the people, right? It's like this thing that we've had forever, we're products of. Everyone should care about that. And I think a lot of people do because it doesn't exist. Like this isn't existing on its own, like the defunding of the public school system, right? And so I'm protecting those. you know, those spaces where we can exist still and making them better is really, really important, you know, but there is no localized one place that I feel like I can go and I have a home to talk about all
And
of
maybe
this
that's
stuff,
part
and
of
it's
the problem,
problematic.
because there is no like,
Yeah,
I mean, even beyond the topics.
Yeah.
It's just the information that this is happening. Simply.
we
like,
need a
that this is
movement.
happening.
We need a movement.
We need a movement.
A counter movement, and right now we're building one,
Well,
but
do you mind
it
if we
can't
invite
drop
you
off.
guys back when we figure
Yes,
out a
absolutely.
master plan to fix everything?
I'm happy to come to talk about a variety of things and help in any way that I
I
can.
could not tell that about you. All right, Madam Chair, if there are no more questions
No more questions and
from the
going
public?
to-
You guys are the public too?
No, just
Closing
thank
thoughts?
you.
Yes,
like,
thank you.
Thank you for having and listening.
Thank you guys for coming. This was like
Yeah.
such a unique opportunity for us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we're gonna
Yes,
share this. with
I'm
you.
thrilled
So-
that I came. I didn't know that I was allowed to do that, really.
I'm glad you came.
You know, it's publicly available, so.
I just think we need to have more of these opportunities, you know, like
Right.
really thinking about the connection right now between NYU and this community board and NYCPS, all of it, you know, being part of the same thing.
Well, write it down, bring it when we write
Yeah.
our resolution.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
All right.
Well,
You know what?
Yes.
VID.
Oh, well, VID, but we can't, we, in our conversations here at the community board, we have to be bipartisan. So VID is one, but we should also
And
find
I'm just,
other,
it just,
yeah, the political clubs who know how to run campaigns and elections might have some great suggestions for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's like, oh, I got a resolution.
What else, Frank?
No, I worked in the Office of Enrollment for many years. I rolled out the universal pre-K and 3K application.
Yay! All right, so I'm gonna call this,
Love it.
I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. May I get a
I
second?
was a teacher. Second.
Oh, second.
Okay, right. Thank you for coming, Gavin.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. And when we do have another meeting, we'll invite you back
Yes.
to inform that resolution.
Yes, because Gavin, you don't spend enough time with us as is.
I love spending time with you anytime. I'm always happy to come.
We love having you here. You're so insightful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the time.
well, we're thrilled to hear you.
We'll get you. I'm gonna.
And the class